Okay, good morning everybody. So root chakra month, how's everybody feeling so far? Grounded, stabilizing? Can we move somebody up to that spot right there, please? Thank you. Appreciate that. We want to be on the front lines. And I know that sometimes that is also not where we want to put ourselves, but that can be the best place for us to kind of push outside of our comfort zones, is to kind of recognize where our place is in the world, and then where we typically land, where we, if you see as a root chakra kind of understanding of that, it's our rituals, it's our habits, it's our physical little idiosyncrasies, right? And that's normal. It's grounding to have routines. It's grounding to like to have a place that we, feel not just attached to, but connected to. There's a reason why you would put yourself there. When I went through my 200-hour training, every day that I showed up, I would put myself in the exact same spot for lecture, because I like to be close to the teachers, right in the front, so that I didn't have a lot of distraction. And for whatever reason, I like to be to the left. I don't know why. I just did. And at my graduation, my teachers actually made it a point to talk to everybody about one thing that they noticed, one aspect of their being that they appreciated. And the lead trainer had been there for over 50 years, and she had really been, noticing. And actually, Kali was her spiritual name, which I also find very interesting as I learn more about Kali and the Kali yantra that we have here. And it's like there's a lot of foundational principles and understanding of that fierce maternal feminine energy. And she was there to look me right in the eye and say, Gina, I really appreciated your presence, because she said, I don't know how you're going to take this, but your physical presence and the way that you always stared at me and showed up in this way was that it kept me on point. She said, I felt like you were absorbing every word I said, and that meant I better be careful with what I say, because she's recording it. And I was like, well, that's an interesting observation. I am. She said, well, and I thought, she goes, maybe, and again, don't take this the wrong way, but I kind of got the sensation of, oh, I paid for this, and I'm going to get every penny's worth of information out of you people. Like, that was his thing. And I said, oh, well, and again, very true. She didn't know me personally before that. I had never practiced in this place before. I had been, up until that point, only practicing in a conference room through my corporate yoga program where I was working, and I had never known a regular yoga studio. I had never known what it was to be in an ashram. I didn't understand, the idiosyncrasies of like a tradition of what you were supposed to do, how you were supposed to show up to things. I just knew, well, this is how I show up to things. Then other people would be in the back of the classroom or laying down. And then that was something that they said, yeah, well, there's a difference in something. She said, it's like you paid for this, so you're showing up in the front row, really alert and totally aware, because you didn't want to waste any time. She said, I definitely got that sensation from you that you didn't want to waste any time, which is true. And now I recognize that there's a part of my nature that when I'm learning something, that is absolutely how I show up. When I've paid for something and I'm there, why wouldn't I be that way? Why wouldn't I study hard? Why wouldn't I be physically present with every fiber of my being? So that's not an aspect of my nature that I should change. That's just something that now I've recognized. When I go to that same spot, though, then my teachers started kind of messing with me a little bit, because they realized that I also did that for my asana practice, but I would put myself back there. So it was like in the back corner. I'd be front and center for learning, but in a back corner behind a potted plant, if I could be, so that nobody could see me. But I could also then, when I used the wall, nobody knew that I was using the wall except for me and my teacher. My teacher could see me using the wall, but then I couldn't be compared to other people, or they wouldn't notice if I needed the wall when I fell out of my balance. And I just felt like, well, that was a safer place to be. And that's when she said, okay, if you're front and center for learning, why not be front and center for asana? And it was a challenge to my foundational being to be put in the front, because then I felt like, well, now everybody's going to see me. Now other people are looking at me. It's not just you. And I could feel the aspects of my nature that didn't want to be seen, that really still felt like I didn't deserve to be seen. And that was now going back, oh, I guess it's about 11 years ago. I also then had a very deep aversion to being photographed. I never wanted anybody to take pictures of me from like the neck down. I was like fine with portraits and like close-ups with people, and selfies were fine, but I didn't want any full pictures of my body. And I realized it was because I felt good. I felt like when I looked at myself in the mirror and I got myself dressed and I put myself together, that I felt presentable and I felt beautiful or attractive or whatever. I just had like a sense of self. But then when I saw pictures of myself, it completely undid what I thought of myself. I thought, well, if there's proof that that's how I actually look, well, then I don't want the proof. It's better that I would just kind of be in my own bubble and not have to, that's fine. I just don't need, or I would always turn, I would have somebody put them in front of me. When my kids were taking pictures, I'd put my children in front of me. You know, it was very direct, and there was a reason. And that was how I carried myself, and I kept it. And I had no full-length mirrors in my house, zero. I hated having, full length. It's like, no, just up here. Up here's enough. I don't need to know what the rest of me looks like. I hated going shopping. I hated going clothing shopping. Putting me in a room, forget about bathing suit shopping. Anybody else feeling like nauseous at the prospect? It's like, oh, that's, a girl knows how to like really, hate herself when she goes, bathing suit shopping. So I just wouldn't, and I would just avoid it at all costs. And it was years that this is what I carried on, and I still continued to believe that this was an aspect of my nature. Then, I guess it was about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I took a group of teacher trainers to visit Dharma in the studio in the city. He does a practice once a month called the Mahasadhana, and at the end of this practice, there is a gathering in the room where they form a huge circle and put 5 mats in the center, and you do offerings of your practice. So you can go in and offer whatever you want, and that's where these beautiful, talented yogis would go in and show off some of the most spectacular, permutations of the physical form that you could imagine. And they're so graceful and they're so put together. And I remember going to the first time I experienced the Mahasadhana, where people were they were like clapping and we're doing chanting. And, then there's these people doing these beautiful asanas and we're watching. And I thought, well, this is odd, because I thought asana was just for you, and nobody's really supposed to look at you and really acknowledge what it is that you're doing. You're just here for you. You're here to practice, but not really to be witnessed practicing. Your teacher can see you because your teacher's here to correct you if you need it, or to help guide you and to go a little bit further, but it's not really about what it looks like. So I was very uncomfortable with the thought and the prospect of being in the center of the room. But then Dharma would say, and if you feel like coming into the middle and offer a shavasana, you offer a shavasana. It doesn't matter what pose you do. You can come in and do something quiet. Why do you need to think that it has to be flashy? So then I thought, well, okay, this is an edge for me. This is a personal edge for me. I should do this. I should put myself into the center of the circle and offer whatever I can offer. It's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. It doesn't matter if I can do a one-handed handstand with my leg touching, my foot on my head. I don't need to be able to do that. I could offer a forward fold. I could offer a sun salutation. Okay, that's what I'll do. So I started, and that was a process of like going in the center. And because Dharma, of who he is, he's been, in this, he's known as like the teacher's teacher, and he has people come from all over the world to practice with him in Manhattan. And there are lots of people who it's like a pilgrimage to come see Dharma. So when they do, during that time, they allow photographs to be taken. I've never taken photographs. I've just never felt like it was appropriate. I didn't want to have photographs taken of me. I just never, no, oh, here, when I go in the center, take this little video. Nope, I just never wanted it to happen. I've never had pictures of me taken when I was practicing. And it was when I went in with a group of trainees, and we went in, the circle was happening, and I thought, I went into the center to give my offering. And at that point, it's an offering to Dharma. It's an offering to just the world. It was whatever. I was feeling so light and open and free, and I just thought, oh, great. I had been working on this practice for, many years, and at that point, I was finally able to do a full split. And that was something that, as an embodiment of Hanuman and all of that work that I had done to be a humble servant, that's Hanumanasana, is the full split, is the offering to Hanuman. And I had just felt this beautiful energy and working through it, and the people around me, and it was beautiful and wonderful. And I offered the practice. My students had taken pictures of me, and I didn't know. And then they showed them to me, and I immediately started to cry because I didn't recognize who it was. It was like, I don't look like that. I don't look like that. My body doesn't look like that. Who is that? And I had avoided looking at myself. I had avoided seeing it. I still didn't have full-length mirrors. I still didn't have, there were so many aspects of myself that I was still hiding from myself because I had thought I didn't change. And then all of a sudden, here's physical proof that not only did I change, but I looked beautiful, I looked elegant, I looked strong. It was like the weirdest, it was the oddest thing. I couldn't really even accept it. And it kind of made me break down a little bit. It was a moment. And I then recognized, well, how else am I hiding? What other aspects of my nature have changed and I still don't know because I don't know. So if there has been, I now have a full-length mirror in my house that I still don't really like, but it's a practice. I force myself to look at myself. I force myself to stand, and I force myself to see myself as my body changes. And I recognize that there are still parts that are hard to love. There are still parts that I feel are not really worthy of being seen. I still don't like certain things. But then, don't we all? We have these aspects of our nature as we start to emerge and we start to change. Where are you still kind of shutting yourself down to actually seeing who you've become, who you are, how far you've come? There are aspects of my body that I still feel like, oh, well, that's not really ever going to be beautiful. But I have to teach myself to actually say, no, actually, that is beautiful. These stretch marks are beautiful. It's a sign of my 9-pound baby that, is now 15 years old and gigantic. And it's like, wow, you were gigantic then, you're gigantic now. And it's like, this is something that passed through me. I look at the signs of my practice and what I've developed and the strength that will come from that. Now I can physically acknowledge, yeah, look at that. That shows my hard work. So I can actually love these aspects of my nature now. And it's not because, oh, now I look more like I should to be lovable. So be mindful. I don't look perfect. None of us ever will, because there's what's perfect, what's a perfect version. If we've been indoctrinated to believe that Photoshop beauty and that perfect youth is the only way that you're really valued or worthy of being seen, then you're never going to be enough. So then we may as well just get used to seeing these signs of age and wear and love as this was love. This body gave me a lot. I can feel that about my body now. I can feel that about my practice now. And that's a very root chakra understanding, is to understand that we've come from somewhere. We can then continue. We can get stronger. We can change. And then certain things will change in other ways that we can't control. But we can still stand and make it a regular practice to stand and see yourself as you truly are in your physical body and love it and embrace it. Working with affirmations. This is something, the book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life is a really wonderful way to kind of stand and witness. Mirror work is actually really powerful because you are forced to see yourself without the filters and say and affirm, I love and approve of myself. That's a tough one. It's a very challenging aspect of practice, is to really stand and look at yourself and say, I love and approve of myself. And it's not in an ego way. If you've ever been in other yoga studios where they have a lot of mirrors, or in hot yoga studios where the teacher doesn't even teach to your face, they teach to the mirror. And it's like this practice where we're taken outside of ourselves and we're watching the mirror and we're watching our physical form and what do we usually do when we're standing in those places? I know if you have ever been, when I first started practicing and I was in these studios where there were all these mirrors, I was incredibly self-conscious. All I was doing the entire time was comparing myself to other people because it was so easy to check other people out in the mirror and compare myself directly to how I wasn't measuring up or how ungraceful I looked or how, my pants didn't fit right or how stupid my hair looked or like whatever. And then I would see, going upside down and then looking in the mirror and again seeing everything. I just wanted to close my eyes. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. When I started going to actual studios that were like temples, there are no mirrors in sight. There's nothing. There was an altar with a picture of a Swami and an Om and then places for your eyes to rest or sacred art. There was nothing ever about the exit, like pulling you outside of yourself to have you compare to anything. So when I first moved into the old studio, anybody remember the old studio, 4th Avenue location? Those mirrors were there. I didn't put them in. They were there, and it would have cost thousands of dollars to have them removed. So what did I do? I put a Kali Yantra on the front. I put writing of inspiration all over it, and we always turned our back to the mirrors. When people would walk in, they would set up their mats and they would face the mirrors. I said, no, this way. The only time I want you seeing those mirrors is if I directly ask you to look behind you and check for an alignment piece. And that is it. I want no one looking in the mirrors during practice. And it was really, it's an aspect of the practice to go inside. Mirrors will pull you outside, which is why first you need to get established. So now that it's a practice for me to look in a mirror and stand and watch and observe, now I can do it with the self-love. Now I can do it and stand taller and see where I've come and see the lines of, on my face and see the way that my body has changed. And it's a self-love practice. So to really stand in front and willingly accept, I love and approve of myself, while maybe even touching those parts of your body that you have trouble loving. This is a great root chakra understanding of it. So sometimes your quirks, these habits, are revealing or covering up, as it may. You can, if you're looking at those quirks, I always just thought, well, that's just my nature. That's just where I like to put myself. That's just where I am. And I didn't really understand that it was hiding or covering something up. Now I understand it. And now where do I go whenever I enter a studio? Front and center. That's where I go. Because once I recognize that the energy in the collective, you get a lot from the people who are usually in those front rows and who are in that front. They've cultivated a lot of practice. They're not physically perfect, but they've cultivated a lot of practice. Because they have cultivated practice, you feed off of them. You can do things when you're around people who inspire you, you get lifted up by it. So when you start to notice, where do you put yourself usually? Who do you reach out to? Socially, how do you interact with people? Do we kind of sit on the fringe, or do we go and reach out? Do we wait for somebody to come and talk to us? Or do we say, I really want to talk to that person. I'd really like to go and do that. Witness your patterns of behavior when it comes to reaching out or connecting with others. And you can then start to understand your root chakra is, how confident are you? Do we trust other people? If you have any inherent deep issues with being judged, it's very much a root chakra thing. I don't trust that this person isn't going to hurt me. Is it safe for me to be myself around this person? So now we get into those deeper layers of who is it really safe to be yourself around. And then if you've surrounded yourself with people that it's not safe to be yourself, why? So question it, start to poke it a little bit. Where do I belong? How do I fit into this? How have I actually perpetuated this? Or am I always going to feel like an outsider? If you have like an outsider tendency, that I always put myself on the fringe. I don't belong here. I'm not like these people. Why? I was feeling it very, very clearly that there was something inside of my energy that was different, but it wasn't because I didn't belong. I just was afraid of being judged all the time. I was comparing myself very directly, and I was afraid that everybody was going to judge me for who I actually was. It wasn't safe for me to be myself. Now, I feel more of an energy of acceptance, of like, it's really okay if you don't accept me. It's really okay if you judge me, because I don't really get my sense of value or self-worth from what you think of me. I know who I am. and this is who I am. Yay. So when we get that grounded connection to self, well, now I'm not really so concerned. Now I actually can then be more inspired and inspiring to be with people who, and I bring out the best in others. I'm like the best cheerleader there is when I see them. It's like I'm the first person to say, wow, beautiful, looks great, awesome, let me hear about, let's, connect. I was not like that a while ago. My personality has changed. I was always extroverted with people who it was safe to be around. But that's not a lot of people. So I was kind of like closed off to when in new situations and circumstances, I would just wait because I didn't really feel like it was safe to be who I was. So now I feel more of an energy, and it's probably because of all the teaching that I've done. I was not a normally extroverted. I didn't have a lot of friends. I had like one or two because I just didn't feel like I belonged. So now I have a wider, net of engagement with people. And it's really sweet. It's like those are the ways that I've changed. How do you want to change? What are the aspects of your nature that you'd like to become more flexible? What's somebody that you would, who inspires you? So in this way, when we also think of the foundational approach to this yogic philosophy, in the Yoga Sutras, there are 4 locks and keys. And the 4 locks and keys in the Yoga Sutras are ways that we can kind of challenge our way, our normal way of being, to kind of invite this new awareness of doing something different. The 4 locks are kind of like ways of human tendencies or human nature, and then the keys are the answers to that. So the lock is to cultivate these certain attitudes towards others. And you can also have these attitudes inside of yourself, so then the key can also be applied to your own energy. To cultivate happiness towards the happy, or like friendliness towards the happy. It seems like that's a pretty common sense thing, that we would be happy for somebody who's happy. But sometimes what triggers inside of us is that we're jealous or we're envious of their happiness or their satisfaction, because it directly shows what we don't have. So it's sometimes easy to be happy for people if they are not in your profession, they don't have what you want, and that it's really easy to celebrate when you're not, that there isn't like some lack of you. So I have, in particular, I've seen it happen with like women who are trying to get pregnant, and then all of a sudden, every pregnant person around them, it's like all of their friends are all of a sudden getting pregnant, and everybody else is getting, what they want. And every time they get another invitation to a baby shower, they break down. And they can't, it's like it's so hard for them to be around them because of their desire. They can't really be happy for what's happening in that moment. So maybe there's an edge of envy or jealousy that you need to work with, and that's a foundational aspect. So to cultivate happiness towards the happy, or friendliness towards the happy. Wow, good for you. You got that promotion. Wow, good for you. You got that book deal. Awesome. You got a new car. How sweet. Just be happy for the person that has, cultivated that. It's difficult sometimes to recognize that there's an edge inside of us, and then we just ignore it. So instead of ignoring it, actually do the work. The second is, again, seems pretty straightforward, is to cultivate compassion towards the unhappy. Seems simple. When somebody's sad, be compassionate. Are we sometimes just wanting to avoid those people who are sad because it triggers our sadness? I see it very clearly. My grief triggers so many people. I can't talk about my grief around an incredible amount of people because my sadness makes them feel sad. And they'll just change the subject or avoid me altogether or just not call or just talk about nothing. Oh, let's change the subject. It's like, I just kind of like bared my soul a little bit and was telling you about how empty or sad I feel, and you start telling me about, your job or what you had for lunch, and I don't care. It's like, where's your compassion? So when we recognize that sometimes we do that, we dissociate and we become, it's an unconscious behavior. Cultivating compassion for the sad means that you can be present with someone's sadness. So if that's something inside of you that you're kind of like struggling with, or maybe sometimes it's even your own sadness, you don't want to be compassionate towards yourself. Nope, keep going. Nope, push it. Nope, let's ignore it. Nope, I'm just going to keep myself busy. So when there's a sadness or a sadness of someone else that's really unnerving, or a sadness inside of you that you're trying to avoid, stay present with it. Cultivate compassion towards the unhappy. It's definitely a root thing that we want to try. Delighting in others' virtues. Where there is virtue, celebrate it. So sometimes what happens is that when somebody's really good at something, and it's like, wow, they're so patient, they're so forgiving, they're so creative, I want that. So it's sometimes easy to kind of like, goody two shoes. They're so damn good. Do they do anything wrong? Do they ever have? It's like, or that one, it's like we develop this sense of like, we get sometimes frustrated about when we see somebody who's just so good and it makes you feel like just so bad. Cultivate, it's like delight in their virtues. If you have somebody who's like really got that thing that you desire, be open and celebrate it, but get closer to them. When you're inspired by somebody, it's like, wow, you are so good at that. You're so good at organizing and keeping your house tidy. Let's find every Virgo you know and delight in their virtue of organization and cleanliness, right? And go, I am like the worst housekeeper. Can you help me with that? Can you show me what you do? It's like, ask your Virgo friends to come over and help you organize. They will love it. It's like, yes, give them like all this ability to do that. And then you don't feel like a piece of crap because, you have a virtue that they would desire. You have something that you could teach them. So when you have these virtues that, somebody else, it's like there's this virtue in them that you would really like, then spend more time with them. Celebrate their virtue. Don't, waste time feeling bad about yourself. Actually invite it into the open and be like, that's awesome. Can you teach me? Can I hang out with you? Because maybe I'll get some of that just by, spending some time with you. The last one is probably the most challenging in the sense of where there is wickedness or like wicked behavior. They don't call it evil. They just call it wicked. To cultivate disregard. Disregard. Disregard the wicked. And it's like, how do you do that? By not feeding the negativity. When somebody's incredibly nasty or negative or just perpetuating a really bad like way of being or a habit, or they're just nasty, what do we usually do? I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to put them in their place. I need to no, we want to feed. It just feeds it. The negativity feeds it. It just feeds even more. Disregard. Disregard the wicked. There are always going to be people who are unconscious. There are always going to be people who are unskillful. There are always going to be people who are greedy or envious or jealous or nasty or whatever, gossips. We can see it all around us all the time. There's wicked behavior, not necessarily it's like we wicked people like disregard. It's really just thinking about what's that behavior. Don't feed it. Just let it go. If somebody's like really just trying to engage you and they just keep throwing these like barbs, disregard. As soon as you release that energy of reactivity, it goes away and they find another target. Don't be the target. Don't bite the hook. I just had to say that. My ex-husband, I finally took me a while to learn it, but I learned it. Oh, your opinion of me is completely irrelevant. And it would drop. That was it. He was waiting for me to become defensive and reactive. I said, well, that's nice, but your opinion of me is completely irrelevant. Just like my opinion of you is completely irrelevant. And he says, well, like you could say anything about me. And I could, but I choose not to, because my opinion of you is completely irrelevant to your life. Just like your opinion of me is completely irrelevant. Disregard. Walk away. Don't give it any more energy. That's really this, when we can step back and go, whoa, nothing I can do about that energy in this moment. That's it. Walk away. It's a hard one to actually embody, but if you have trouble with reactivity and needing the last word and bringing things to a painful point, it's the biggest one. Disregard. There's only so much that you can do with your energy. So in your physical practice, take these things in. Take in the locks and the keys. Really imagine, okay, is there some body image issue that I have to kind of like work with? All right, what do I need? Cultivate compassion. Is there something that I want that I'm really like envious of and that I'm trying to go for? Let's celebrate the virtues of somebody else. Dharma would say, very clearly, if there is a pose you want to do that you cannot do, close your eyes and pretend. We are all connected anyway. Look at them and say, Beautiful. Celebrate. It's like don't get bent out of shape that you can't do it. It's just a part of your body. It's like he says, and the poses go anyway at some point. They all leave. He says all these years. So if he only identified with being a strong yogi because of all the things that he could do, he says every year a few more poses leave me. Oh well, it's not really about the practice that way anyway. So when it's not, let it go. It's like cultivate compassion. Let these things go. So let's find some quiet center for yourself if you haven't done so already. Get really grounded, noticing